Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
I love authors. You know that, all my listeners and my watchers on YouTube, because authors are very interesting. You never know what their life's been like, and sometimes their books have nothing to do with their lives, but I always enjoy them. And I'm very happy to have Herbert J. Abrams on today, because he wrote a great book. It's a book, the title of which I think any of us could have. Life's Many Curves. Oh, my goodness, Herbert. Don't we all? There's your book. Don't we all have many curves in our life?
Oh, yes, many changes.
Yeah, and I guess you have to go with it, right? So you can't let them get you down.
No. You have to be prepared for anything.
And you've led quite an interesting life, and I thought maybe you would like to share it a little bit. You lived in Miami, you said, most of your life.
Since 1944, I came down here when I was just 10 years old.
Okay, and you never really left, except going into the service.
9 years in the Army.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. Couldn't wait to get back.
I'm sure that's true. So what was your career like? I mean, were you a movie star, or you could have been, or were you in the film business? What were you doing?
Well, I've had so many different jobs, and so many careers. I started out as a photographer. That was my choice of profession. I did that for a while, professionally, for a very short while in civilian service. But when I went to the military service, I also did it there too. But then again, I got away from it after a while. So during the 9 years I was in the military, I had different positions also.
And let me ask you, as a photographer, what did you take pictures of in the military?
Commercial. It was commercial. In the military? No, it was really
terrible things?
No, the regimental newspaper.
Oh.
That kind of thing. And, sports events and things that occurred.
You didn't take pictures of bodies or things like that?
Oh, no.
No, that wasn't.
Nothing like that.
Okay.
No.
That's good. That's why you have a happy face, because it must have been very hard.
I was supposed to go to the Public Information Office when I was in the Army. I was in basic training. And they put me on a hold, keep me at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And I could have stayed there for my entire career if I had wanted to. But what happened was, even then, as I was supposed to go, the man I was supposed to replace at the Public Information Office as a photographer, he decided to re-enlist. I couldn't take the position. So they ended up putting me in a quartermaster commissary, working in the commissary.
And did that all prepare you for your future life?
Listen, I was prepared for anything. I mean, I was ready to change. If I had to make a change, I was ready for that. So even if I couldn't be a photographer with a Public Information Office, I managed to get myself as a regimental photographer for their newspaper.
And what were cameras like then?
Oh my God! In those days, we had what we call a Crown Graphic 4x5 inch film, the Crown Graphic, different ones. And then finally, when I was doing it for myself, I bought what they call a ruler cord, which is a 2 1/4 by 2 1/4 film, and I used that for a long time.
And did you have to develop your own film?
Oh, of course. Yeah. In fact, while I was in high school, I was doing that. One of the last things I did in high school was work for a company of freelance photographers. They used to go around and take tourist pictures, and that was
and sell them, right?
They
take a picture.
Yeah. So at night, I would have to come in and develop all their films, and it was color film too.
Huh?
But it was an experience.
Okay, so now let's fast forward. So
Okay.
now what happened? Did you stay as a photographer? No, you were in a lot of other things. What did you do?
Oh my goodness.
Well, actually, before you answer that, I want to talk a little bit about your book, because your book is a reflection of what your life's been like.
Oh, yes.
So why don't you kind of talk about why you wrote the book and what the book has that people are going to enjoy from your experiences.
Why I wrote the book?
Yeah, why?
I wanted to share my experience. I thought it was interesting. And I wrote it in such a way that I didn't want people to be just absorbed in just details. So I didn't make it a large book. I wanted to flow so that people would read it continuously and be, enjoy it. So it's 160 pages. It could have been 300. I didn't want to do it that way.
And when I first read it, it reminded me of someone writing a memoir. But the difference is that your life was so interesting. It wasn't just about you. It was about a lot of people in that same era.
Yeah. Well, family, of course, too. And no, I went through my detail. I went through my military years, things that have happened during that time. And then, of course, when my first marriage, of course, was a little difficult because I had a wife who had emotional problems. And in fact, that was the reason why I didn't stay in the service, because they couldn't help her. I was advised to get out of the service and get some help by civilian doctors. And it was psychiatrists, that kind.
And so that made you very humane, of course. A lot of guys are tough guys, but when you have someone that really needs you that way, it was good. In fact, I just saw the movie, with Mr. Rogers.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a lot of that in a way. So I can see just from looking at you, you're very sweet and you're very kind. And so your wife was very lucky to have someone like you, but probably everybody you dealt with, you were that kind of a person, weren't you?
I was always a sensitive person. I was raised that way. My mother was that way. I found that all through life, it's made me a better person. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that cries at
good
films.
Well, you'll cry at Mr. Rogers when you see it, but that's good. I think more men are feeling that way. But what were some of the major things that you did that were very important to you in your life?
Oh, wow. Basically, the most important thing was raising my children.
And how many do you have?
Well, I had 2 boys from my first marriage. I had to divorce my first wife, and my children at that time were teenagers. And I was granted custody of the children due to her condition, and I raised them. And then my second marriage, I met my second wife, of course, and she had daughters. I always wanted a daughter.
Oh.
So the daughter I have now, she's still with us, and raised her since she was just a toddler. So she's my daughter. There's no stepdaughter. I just consider her my daughter. And I raised them both, and they're all doing well, and I'm very happy about that.
Do you all still live in the Miami area?
Well, no, I have a son up in North Carolina, Winston-Salem, and he's doing well. He runs a nursing service.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
That's part of my life. I'm glad that.
Really?
Yes, I'm a gerontologist.
Oh, no kidding.
So I'm very thankful. It takes a certain male to do that. That's great.
Yeah.
But let's get back to you. So besides your children, now, of course, rearing your sons put you in a different situation too.
Well,
you needed to have help.
Well, we went through a situation in the 1970s, if you recall, was an era of heavy drugs in the high schools. So I went through a period of saving them because they both got into it. When you have a divorce in a family, it disrupts the children terribly.
I didn't have a divorce, and two of my children also got into drugs, so it has nothing even to do with it. It was the time. It was the time, yeah.
We were very fortunate. My second wife, I have to thank her because she did most of the work. We found a program that was very successful. It didn't stay that way because government interference. They were going, it was sort of violating the children's rights, you know what I mean? But it was the best thing in the world for the kids, and they had a very good success rate. But
so in your family, though, so your family's been very important to you, but on the outside were there certain people in your life outside of your family that, I know in your book you talk about some of that, who were very influential in
Yes, I did have.
life?
I have a friend of mine. He's still my friend. Gil Bryant is his name, and he was a teacher. He taught the one classroom away from my classroom, and he mentored me when I started teaching high school. Without the experience, I started teaching high school at 55 years old, and so inexperienced. I had to go back to college for that, and I enjoyed it for 19 years teaching high school.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
And where were you teaching?
Well, I taught at Miami-Jackson Senior High School, which is an inner-city school.
I remember
Did
the
that for
green band uniforms.
Oh, yeah, green.
Because I went to Miami
Right.
Beach High, and I
that
was in the
right?
band, right? But that's okay.
Well, I went to Miami Beach High until the 10th grade. Up until the 10th grade. Then
Well,
went
I
over-
graduated at Miami Beach High in 1954.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. I graduated in 52 at Miami Tech.
Interesting. Those were the days, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
But okay, so keep going. So now what you did is you were teaching, and were there any people whom you taught
Yeah.
who you still are in touch with and maybe have done some?
I do, definitely. I had one of my students was I was teaching at the time television and video recorders repair, and one of my better students, used that experience while he was going to college. He was very successful. He supported himself. He put himself through college using that radio and TV, and he became a television reporter.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and he's doing very well.
And he will always remember you. That's what
Oh,
students
yes.
do.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
remember.
Oh, I have constantly have people contacting me, and I'm still in contact with many students. Yeah.
That's what I think. Teaching is a tough business, but I think that's the beautiful part, that you do make a difference in kids' lives.
Oh yeah, I know that.
And they make a difference in yours, I'm sure.
I know that. Yeah, I have so many that told me I'd be in jail if it wasn't for you.
I love that.
Really, yeah,
well,
because
I'm sure
they
that's
learned
true.
something and they enjoyed it.
Right.
When you go in, so many children in high school are turned off by the academics, and their inability. They don't have they're insecure about learning, and they don't have the confidence. So when I was teaching vocational, it's something that they found out that they could learn and they could use, and it's actually practical, and it encouraged them to learn. So not only did they go into the profession that I was teaching them, but it encouraged them to learn more. So they went to college too, even though that wasn't their main motive or main goal.
But what you said is true. They lacked confidence, and once they found confidence in something,
Yeah.
then they could move forward with it. In fact, I just saw a TV documentary about a lot of the prisoners now, prisons, that they're starting to teach them so that they're enjoying that. Now they're in prison, but they're learning things, and then when they do get out, maybe they'll be able to use that.
You're right.
Yeah, so it's very good. Okay, so that's good, but tell me about some of the, did you travel? And where did you go?
Well, the only traveling I really did in the services, I went to Germany for 2 years.
But when you were in Miami, did you not go on vacations and you traveled
sure.
places?
Actually, the only traveling I did, I was so preoccupied in my business. I ran a television sales and service business for almost 25 years before I taught. So my business kept me here in one place.
Okay.
All right, and but since I married my wife now, Eva, we did some cruising.
Good.
And we traveled.
Yeah, cruises are really very relaxing, very nice.
Right.
You do get to see a lot of things. And do you still use your camera?
Oh yes, of course. Yeah.
And now it's so different, isn't it? Just like now you're on Facebook Live. We do have Alyssa Watcher, as a matter of fact. Yeah. But it's so easy to take pictures now of people because, our wonderful phones, and then you can correct the picture. I mean, it is a different world, isn't
It's
it?
a completely different world. Everything we used to do, used to take pictures. You had a roll of film of 12 on it, or 35 millimeter. You might have 35 pictures on it. And then you take those pictures, and you don't know how they're going to come out. Then you wait and you get them developed, and then All that took time.
Right. Well,
Now it's instantaneous. Now you can look at your picture immediately after you take it.
true. My guest is Herbert J. Abrams, and he is the author of this wonderful book called Life's Many Curves. And you can see why that's a great name. Could be a great name for a lot of books because we all live in a world where we're always taking curves. But I get the feeling that you were able to hit a curve and know the right direction to go. You never let it make you crash.
No. That's true. Starting any service, military service, if I found that I was in a position that I didn't want to be in, I didn't enjoy it for one reason, I was able to find a way around it. I started, like as I said, I was in basic training, supposed to go into photography, and then ended up in the quartermaster corps. Well, from there on, I went into, after I did the, switched into this other regiment where I was taking pictures for them, then I wanted to get out of that. So I went into the engineers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I was working on the training ranges, where they firing ranges, hand grenade ranges, bazooka, everything that they had to learn and practice on. I took care of those ranges.
Did you have,
Service
was
out.
your hearing impaired?
No.
You're lucky. Did you have to wear anything to help that? I mean, because
No,
that's
not really. I didn't.
interesting about that.
Yeah.
So you know a lot about those things.
Oh, yeah.
So you were in there, you said, for what, 8 years or 9 years?
9 years in the service.
And that
yeah.
sounds to me like a very important part of your life. I'm hearing that. You
Yeah.
keep coming back to that.
Well, I mentioned about my first wife. I had problems with her. I could have stayed at Fort Jackson for my entire career if I wanted to. But the problems I was having with her, it was just too much for me to take. So unbeknown to her, I volunteered to go overseas. And I went to the personnel department, and I said, where can you send me? I got to get out of here.
Yeah, I got that.
So I went to Germany for that.
Right. And what did you do in Germany?
Ended up in the 2nd Armored Division.
Uh-huh.
And at first I was a squad leader in a armored personnel carrier platoon. And did that for a while, but wasn't too happy with that. Wasn't too happy. I had different experiences, which I have in the book about it.
Yes.
And you'll see why. So I went to the quartermaster, well, not the quartermaster, but the supply department area of the battalion, and we called it S4. And I said, hey, you got an opening for me? I was familiar with the quartermaster, so I said, you have an opening for me? He said, matter of fact, we do. I ended up in what they call the ration breakdown. So my job every day was to drive 30 miles to a place called Bad Kreuznach, pick up all the rations for the platoon, for the battalion, and drive back, and that was it. That was my job. It wasn't much.
Well, I wonder if you will agree with this. Everyone I know, including my husband, who were in the military, they learned not only the trade or what they were supposed to do, but there were certain things they brought back with them. They were organized. They were always on time. There were certain things that stuck with them.
Oh,
Is that what you think the military does for people? What does the military do for people?
Military, I have to say it, they made a man out of me. I went in at 117 pounds, really. And went through basic training. They beefed me up. I went up to about 130 pounds. Muscles and everything else that came with it. And they taught me discipline because I was very undisciplined as a child, as a teenager. I got into trouble all the time, doing all the wrong things. And the first time I stepped out of line in basic training, I ended up doing 24 hours of what they call KP. And I mean, that was horrible. It taught me a lesson. So I did learn good discipline, good habits.
So
good
obviously
traits.
you were able to transfer what you learned into your public life after you came out of that.
Of course, yeah.
And it sounds like you don't really even want to retire. You're just enjoying your life.
No, I'm not retired.
Right.
Well, I retired from teaching.
Right, I got that.
Right.
But you're writing a book. Are you going to write another one?
I was planning on writing another one about my wife, Eva.
Interesting.
Because she has such an interesting life.
Ah.
Much more, let's put it this way, much more difficult than my life.
Yeah, it was serious. I hear it.
Very
serious. Yes.
Yeah, and I covered some of that in the book.
And I do know, yes, and I do know people today who either have serious husbands or serious wives with husbands or wives with serious problems. And some people stay with them, but most people can't because it takes them down. So that made a difference for you. So sounds like, though, you now have a fabulous wife, and you're enjoying, almost like you're a kid. I can see the look in both your eyes for each other. It's almost like a whole new honeymoon.
It's true.
It's
nice. True. Yeah.
Well, you know,
so.
they say love is always there, no matter what.
Right.
No matter what happens, you find the right person that you get along, and I'm sure that you've learned enough that you can get along with anyone.
I do.
Yeah, I see that.
I'm on the board of directors at my condominium. We have a 300-unit
Oh
condominium.
Boy, you have to be.
I'm the secretary right now.
That's a tough job.
It is. And,
we call that the condo commandos.
Right, and I get along with everybody mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so let's get back to your mother. So your mother did have a great influence on you, didn't she?
Yeah, unfortunately, my mother passed away at the age of 53. A heart attack. 10 years after she had breast cancer. She survived it and then died early.
But there was enough in her for you, and you got it, didn't you?
Yeah.
And what about your dad?
My dad was he was a man's man, a boxer, a pool
player,
but a professional pool player. I mean, he was really good at everything he did. But he was reliable. He's the kind of guy during the Depression. He was keeping us fed, and he was doing everything, continuous working. He was an investigator for a while. He was a cab driver before he came down to Miami.
That's good, but he had to earn a living, and he would do anything for his family.
He even became a bookie, illegal bookie. Right. But he got arrested one time. He said, "That's it, no more."
So, do you have brothers and sisters?
I have. My brother passed away about 2 years ago, and no sisters. But he was an older brother, 5 years older than I was, and unfortunately, it was cancer.
But you're, I can see that you have a very nice, I wouldn't call it a quiet life, because I can see, for anybody who's watching you now on Facebook Live, they can see you have a twinkle in your eye. You'd be a very good Santa Claus. Because you have a twinkle that kids, I think you do. You just have to put a suit on you and a lot of white hair and a beard, and you could be a Santa Claus.
Well, I got a belly for it.
No, I was just thinking, because there's certain people you can just see that they are kind, gentle, smart, and it's so wonderful having you on our show today.
Thank you.
I'll just tell everybody again, you can buy this book. I'd like you to put that book up again and show it. It's beautifully done. The cover is gorgeous. It's Life's Many Curves, and as a matter of fact, that's been our book of the month for November. So if you are reading Boomer Times and Senior Life in November, you will absolutely be able to see that book, get the review that I wrote, and then you can buy the book, and they'll get the book on Amazon
and Kindle.
Amazon and Kindle, Life's Many Curves.
Right.
And so you are thinking of writing another book, but the interesting one about your wife Eva would be because of it sounds to me like it'll help other people. See, that's the whole point, that when you write about someone, there's always someone says, "Oh, that's mine. That's what I did. That's what I have," right?
Right. Well, her experiences, of course, started during the war, Second World War. And then, of course, when she went to Israel after that, she was involved in the military there.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, something it's called the Palmach. This is in 1948. She was there before that, but in 1948, when the war started and they had the independence, they were declared a state.
Quite a time.
Yeah, that was a time for her. She was captured by the Jordanians and
for
put in a
heaven's
prison
sakes.
camp.
Oh, so this will be a very interesting
her
book.
life is extremely interesting.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, for her to recall all of the incidents, a lot of tragedy, and she suffers from some PTSD from it.
I'm sure.
So to recall a lot of this is very depressing to her.
Right.
So to draw out all of this information, it's taken me a lot of time, and it's going to take a lot more, and I don't know if she can hold up for it.
Well, this will be very
Emotionally.
interesting. Well, but you've certainly been a wonderful guest, and I know that you have a lot more to talk about in the future. We have another show that we're going to do with you, and I'm so glad that you came all the way up from Miami to be on Facebook Live with us. And
From Aventura.
Oh, Aventura, that's right. Okay, yeah, Aventura, which is really Miami, but it's Aventura.
No, let's not get to
Oh, let's not do that. Right? Okay,
no, it's
I
a
know.
different city.
Okay, I know it is. I know it. Every one time, my son and his family live in Miami, so
Yeah,
I'm
right.
always going down to
I know.
Aventura, then down after that.
Okay.
But thank you very much for being on our show, and
It's my
I
pleasure.
look forward to seeing you again.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.